Have you ever been driving late at night, miles from anywhere, the only light for what feels like an eternity coming from your own headlights cutting through the oppressive darkness? Have you ever felt that primal chill, the one that makes the hairs on your arms stand up, even when the heater is blasting, convinced you're not as alone as you believe? This is the kind of story that makes you check your locks twice before going to bed. So before the story truly begins, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from, your city and local time, in the comments below. And if you've had a similar creepy encounter, share it below. Maybe your story will inspire the next one. Now settle in and question everything. What if the impossible is real? Let's uncover the truth, or what's left of it. It started, as these things often do, on a perfectly ordinary night that turned anything but. It was late autumn, roughly 2 years ago, and I was on my way back from visiting my sister, who lives on the other side of the state. It's about a 5-hour drive, mostly rural highways, and I usually break it up with a stop, but that night I just wanted to get home. The weather had been clear when I left, but as I got further north, a low, thick fog began to roll in, making the already dark roads feel even more isolating. The temperature had dropped significantly, too, and a cold, persistent drizzle started to tap against the windshield. It wasn't a downpour, just that miserable, saturating kind of rain that makes everything feel damp and gray. I remember thinking how much I hated driving through that particular stretch of road. It's known locally as the Whisperwind Highway, not for any romantic reason, but because of the way the wind often howls through the sparse trees alongside it, creating a sound that truly does resemble whispers. There's not much out there, a few scattered farms, dilapidated barns, and miles of dense forest. Cell service is notoriously spotty, which I'd learned the hard way a few years prior when I ran out of gas. This time I'd topped off the tank, had a full charge on my phone, though I knew it wouldn't matter much, and a thermos of strong coffee. I was prepared for the long haul, or so I thought. Around 11 p.m., nearing the halfway point, the drizzle intensified into a steady rain. My wipers were working overtime, smearing the light from oncoming cars into abstract blurs. I was focused on the road, watching the white lines disappear and reappear under my headlights when I saw him, a figure on the shoulder, just at the edge of the tree line. Initially, I thought it was an animal, perhaps a deer, but as I got closer, the shape resolved into a person, a man. He was standing completely still, facing the road, no thumb out, no desperate wave, just standing there, silhouetted against the dark. My first thought was concern. No one walks on Whisperwind Highway in this weather, especially not at this hour. It's too dangerous, too remote. My second thought was a jolt of alarm, a subconscious warning bell ringing in my head, telling me to keep driving. But then I imagined myself in his shoes, stranded, cold, wet, with no phone signal. My empathy won out. I've always been taught to help others, and it felt wrong, almost morally reprehensible, to just drive past him. I slowed down, checking my rearview mirror before pulling over about 20 feet past him, letting him come to me. I put the car in park, leaving the engine running, and reached over to unlock the passenger door. As I waited, I watched him in my side mirror. He didn't move immediately. He just stood there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 5 or 6 seconds. Then slowly, deliberately, he started walking toward the car. His pace was unhurried, almost deliberate, despite the rain lashing down. He didn't seem to be in a rush at all, which struck me as odd. Most people would be jogging, desperate to get out of the elements. He was wearing dark, nondescript clothing, a hooded jacket, I think, and dark pants. I couldn't make out his features beneath the hood, which was pulled low over his face. He reached the passenger door and opened it. He didn't say anything, didn't offer a polite thank you or an explanation. He just stooped and climbed in, closing the door with a soft click. The air in the car instantly grew colder, despite the blasting heat, and I shivered involuntarily. A strange, earthy smell, like damp soil and something metallic, filled the small space. It wasn't unpleasant exactly, but it was distinct and out of place. This small detail, the sudden chill, the smell, it all felt off. I tried to shake it off, dismissing it as the effect of the cold rain and his wet clothes. "Rough night, huh?" I attempted, forcing a cheerful tone, trying to break the unsettling silence. I glanced at him quickly. He was sitting perfectly still, hands on his knees, staring straight ahead through the windshield. His hood was still up, obscuring his face almost completely, even in the dim dashboard light. All I could see was the very bottom of his chin and a hint of a pale mouth. He didn't respond. Not a nod, not a grunt, nothing. He just remained frozen, a silent, dark silhouette beside me. My internal alarm bells, which I'd momentarily quieted, started ringing again, louder this time. This was beyond odd. Most hitchhikers, even the quiet ones, would at least acknowledge your presence. "Where are you headed?" I asked, trying again, my voice a little less confident this time. Still nothing. Just the rhythmic slap of the wipers, the hum of the engine, and the rush of the rain outside. The silence stretched, becoming thick and heavy, pressing down on me. I felt a prickle of fear start to crawl up my spine. My gaze kept flicking to the rearview mirror, then to the man beside me. It was foolish to pick up someone so unresponsive, so unsettling. My empathy was quickly being replaced by a growing sense of dread. Was he sick, deaf, or worse? I cleared my throat, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. "Look, I'm going west towards Blackwood. Can I drop you off anywhere along that route?" I offered, trying to keep my voice steady. The town of Blackwood was about 40 miles away, a small, sleepy place. He still didn't move or speak, just stared ahead, unblinking, it seemed. I was starting to feel a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. It was a cold, creeping fear, the kind that makes your stomach clench. I wanted to tell him to get out, but I was afraid of his reaction, or lack thereof. What would I do if he just didn't? I made a decision then. I wasn't going to press him. I was just going to drive until I saw a populated area, maybe a gas station, and then I'd kindly ask him to leave. Or more likely, I'd just pull over, get out on my side, and hope he took the hint. The thought of being alone with him in the middle of nowhere, with his eerie silence and the heavy rain, was becoming unbearable. I slowly pulled my car back onto the highway, the tires splashing through puddles. Every nerve in my body was on high alert. The only sound in the car was the rain and the mechanical whir of the vehicle, amplifying the unsettling presence beside me. I tried to focus on the road, but my peripheral vision kept dragging me back to the dark shape in the passenger seat. I remember thinking about those old urban legends, the ones where people pick up a ghostly hitchhiker. I scoffed at the idea internally, trying to reassure myself. This was real life. There was a man, a physical, tangible man, sitting next to me. He just happened to be incredibly rude, or perhaps unwell. But the thought, once planted, festered. The way he had appeared so suddenly, so perfectly still by the roadside, in the middle of nowhere, without so much as a backpack or a bag. And the absolute, impenetrable silence he maintained. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white. The road ahead was endless, dark, and slick with rain. I sped up a little, wanting to put as much distance between myself and that desolate spot on the Whisperwind Highway as possible. I kept my eyes fixed forward, occasionally darting glances at the speedometer, anything to avoid looking directly at my passenger. The only sign he was even there was the occasional glint of wet fabric as we passed beneath the power lines that crisscrossed the highway every few miles. Each one seemed to momentarily highlight his unsettling stillness. The drive continued, each mile stretching into an unbearable eternity. The rain was relentless, drumming a frantic rhythm on the roof, and the wind howled outside, living up to the highway's eerie name. I focused on the white line, my hands locked onto the steering wheel, my heart thumping an erratic beat against my ribs. I tried to rationalize his silence. Maybe he was in shock, or profoundly shy, or even had a language barrier. But deep down, I knew it wasn't any of those things. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was active somehow. a heavy presence that seemed to absorb all other sound, making the space between us feel unnaturally vast and cold. As time crawled by, I noticed other small, unnerving details. My car, a sturdy, reliable old sedan, usually held the road well, but that night it felt different. It swayed slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if there was an uneven weight distribution or a subtle pull to the right. I dismissed it as the slick roads or perhaps a strong gust of wind, but the sensation persisted. Then there was the temperature. Despite the heater being on full blast, an icy pocket of air seemed to emanate from the passenger's side, reaching across the console and chilling my left arm. It was a localized cold, an unnatural chill that my car's heating system simply couldn't combat. I considered turning on the interior light just to get a better look at him, to break the spell of darkness, but a terrifying instinct held me back. I was afraid of what I might see, or perhaps what I might not see. I tried to hum a tune, anything to fill the void, but my throat felt tight and dry. My mind raced, trying to invent scenarios that made sense of the situation. Was he a runaway? Someone fleeing a crime? The thought made my blood run cold. But his stillness, his utter lack of any overt threatening gesture, kept me from outright panicking and slamming on the brakes. It was his passivity that was so unnerving. There was no fidgeting, no shifting, no sound of breathing, nothing to indicate the vibrant life of a human being. He was a statue, a perfectly still, rain-drenched figure. Around the time I was passing the derelict old Miller's Mills sign, a rusted, leaning landmark that always marked roughly 2 hours into my journey, I took another covert glance at him. From the corner of my eye, I thought I saw a subtle shift. His head, still encased in the dark hood, seemed to have tilted ever so slightly towards me. Not enough to be obvious, not enough to be aggressive, but just enough to make me feel profoundly watched. My heart leaped into my throat. I quickly averted my gaze back to the road, my grip on the wheel tightening to the point of pain. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a fight-or-flight response screaming at me. I was alone, miles from the nearest town, with no cell service, and a profoundly disturbing hitchhiker who seemed less like a person and more like an apparition. I tried to convince myself I was overtired, seeing things in the gloom and the rain. I had been driving for hours, fueled only by bad coffee and the desire to get home. Fatigue could play tricks on the mind. The human brain is notoriously good at filling in gaps, at creating patterns where none exist. Was I subtly projecting my fear onto his inert form? This level of ambiguity was driving me slowly mad. I pushed the speed limit a little, the tires hydroplaning momentarily, sending a jolt of panic through me. I eased off, knowing that a crash in this weather in this location would be disastrous. Then it happened. I was just passing a long stretch of dense pines, the trees so tall and close together they created an almost absolute darkness that swallowed my headlights. I glanced quickly into my side mirror, checking for any follow-up vehicles. There were none, as usual on this road, and for a brief, fleeting second, the interior light on the passenger side flickered. It was an old car, and the dome light had always been a bit temperamental. In that split second of partial illumination, I thought I saw his profile, just a faint outline against the dark window. It looked wrong. The shape of his head, the angle, everything seemed distorted, but it was so quick that I immediately doubted myself. This flicker, though, gave me a small, desperate window to look directly at him, to confirm my fears or dismiss them. I turned my head just a fraction. He was gone. My breath hitched. My eyes snapped to the passenger seat, then back to the road, then back to the seat. Empty. The dark, huddled form was simply no longer there. The seatbelt was still buckled, twisted into itself as I'd left it. The door was closed. There was no trace, no wet patch, no residual smell, nothing. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air. I slammed on the brakes hard. The car skidded violently on the wet asphalt, hydroplaning across 2 lanes before I managed to wrestle it back under control, bringing it to a juddering stop sideways across the highway. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it roaring in my ears. The sudden jolt threw my thermos of coffee to the floor, spilling its contents, but I barely registered it. "What the?" I whispered, my voice hoarse, disbelieving. I stared at the empty passenger seat, then frantically spun my head, checking the back seat, the floor, everywhere. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was ludicrous. Impossible. I had been driving at over 60 miles an hour. He couldn't have opened the door and jumped out without me noticing. He couldn't have shrunken into the floorboards. He was just gone. The sheer impossibility of it was a physical blow, making my head spin. I felt a cold wave of nausea wash over me. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to regulate my breathing. My mind was screaming, trying to reconcile what I had just seen, or rather, not seen, with reality. I remembered the sudden cold, the strange smell, his utter silence. Was he even real to begin with? Had I hallucinated the entire encounter? But I had clearly seen him standing on the side of the road, seen him walk to my car, seen him open the door and get in. I had felt the shift in weight, the sudden drop in temperature. This wasn't a hallucination. This was something far, far worse. My car was still stalled across the highway, the engine running, wipers still slapping frantically. I was shaking uncontrollably. I forced myself to put the car in park and turn on the interior lights. The sudden bright glow was jarring, but it confirmed the emptiness. The passenger seat was undeniably bare. I ran my hand over the fabric, expecting dampness, a residue, anything. It was perfectly dry, bone dry. Not even a faint trace of the mysterious earthy, metallic scent I had noticed earlier. It was as if he had never been there at all. This was the point where my rational mind completely broke. I started to question everything. Had I actually pulled over? Had I actually opened the door? The memory was vivid, tactile, but the evidence contradicted it completely. I glanced at the dashboard clock. It was 12:37 a.m. I had picked him up roughly 30 minutes prior. 30 minutes of absolute, terrifying silence, culminating in an impossible disappearance. This experience was going straight into the fear archives of my mind, a collection of stories I'd always thought were just urban legend. But this was mine. I couldn't stay there. I slowly, carefully maneuvered the car back into my lane, my hands slick with sweat despite the cold. I drove, not knowing where I was going, just needing to be away from that spot, away from the terrifying thought that maybe he was still there, somehow, incredibly, silently, unseen. Every shadow seemed to shift. Every tree outside the window seemed to hold a staring face. I kept glancing at the passenger seat, half expecting him to magically reappear, or to be met with an empty, gaping void where the seat should be. The road ahead was still dark, still raining, but now it felt infused with an unspeakable dread. The silence in my car was no longer just his absence. It was the chilling silence of an empty tomb. I just wanted to reach civilization, to see another car, another light, to prove to myself that I wasn't completely alone, and that what had just happened wasn't real. But a part of me knew it was. The rest of the drive home was a blur of adrenaline and terror. I focused on the faint glow of my dashboard, my eyes darting from the road to the passenger seat every few seconds, half expecting to see him materialize there again, silent and still. The rain continued to fall, a relentless curtain that perfectly matched my internal chaos. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my hands ached, my knuckles white. Every shadow that danced at the periphery of my vision became a spectral figure, every gust of wind a whisper from the empty seat beside me. I tried to call my sister, then a friend, but just as I expected, there was no service. The isolation on Whisperwind Highway was absolute, and I was utterly alone with my unraveling sanity. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the first hint of pre-dawn light was just painting the horizon a dismal gray. I practically scrambled out of the car, leaving the engine running, the headlights still blazing. I ran inside, fumbling with my keys, and locked the door behind me with a visceral sense of relief. I didn't even bother turning on the lights. I just leaned against the door, my chest heaving, trying to process the impossible events of the night. After a few minutes, when my breathing finally started to regulate, I forced myself to walk back outside and turn off my car. It was still running, wipers slapping, headlights cutting through the gloom, a stark reminder of the nightmare I had just endured. The next few days were a haze. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that dark, hooded figure, felt that inexplicable cold, heard the deafening silence. I replayed the encounter over and over in my mind, searching for any logical explanation. Had I blacked out? Was it a dream? But the memories were too vivid, too detailed, too real. I even went back to my car, meticulously searching the passenger side. Still nothing. No wet patches, no stray hairs, no weird smell. It was as if the car had been scrubbed clean of any evidence that a hitchhiker had ever been there. The only thing I found was the faint, earthy metallic smell in the car for a couple of days, even after airing it out. Not strong, but undeniable, a lingering phantom of his presence. I tried talking about it tentatively to a close friend. She listened patiently, but I could see the skepticism in her eyes. "Are you sure you weren't just really tired, maybe hallucinating a bit?" she'd asked, trying to be gentle. I didn't blame her. It sounded insane. Even to me, after the initial shock, the story was hard to believe, but I had lived it. I knew what I saw and what I didn't see. The ambiguity was the worst part. Was I losing my mind, or had something truly inexplicable occurred? Unable to shake the feeling and desperate for answers, I started doing some research. I typed "Hitchhiker disappears from car" into every search engine I could find. To my surprise, I found dozens of similar stories, often labeled as urban legends or local folklore. The vanishing hitchhiker was a common trope, particularly on remote roads known for accidents or containing strange histories. Many accounts describe the hitchhiker as silent, cloaked, and leaving no trace. Some even mentioned a sudden drop in temperature. This was the first grounding detail that made me question my sanity a little less. I wasn't alone in this experience. Then I stumbled upon a local online forum dedicated to strange occurrences in our state. Someone had started a thread titled "Whisperwind Highway Phenomena." My blood ran cold. One post in particular caught my eye. It was from about 5 years ago, describing a very similar encounter. The poster, a truck driver, recounted picking up a silent, hooded figure near Miller's Mill on a rainy night. The figure vanished from his cab mid-drive, leaving the driver shaken and convinced he'd seen a ghost. What truly sent shivers down my spine was a follow-up comment to that post. Someone had replied with a link to an old newspaper clipping, dated from the 1970s. It was an article about a young man who had died on Whisperwind Highway, just a few miles from Miller's Mill, in a hit-and-run accident during a heavy storm. He had been walking home after his car broke down. His name was Thomas Miller, and he was the son of the owner of Miller's Mill. The connection was too chilling to ignore. Thomas Miller, Miller's Mill, the location where I picked up the hitchhiker and where the previous poster had picked up theirs, was eerily close to the site of his death. And the description of the man in the article, tall, slender, wearing a dark rain slicker, matched the vague silhouette I had seen. But what did it mean? Was this a ghost, a recurring spectral manifestation, or something even stranger, something that fed on the fear and isolation of those who traversed the desolate highway? The idea that I had, for a brief time, shared my car with a restless spirit or some other entity was terrifying. My fear archives were getting a new, very personal entry. I never drove on Whisperwind Highway at night again. I found alternative, longer routes, even though it added significant time to my journey. The experience had fundamentally altered me. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings, constantly checking my rearview mirror, flinching at unexpected sounds. Every time I heard the rain lash against the window at night, or felt a sudden, inexplicable chill in a room, the image of that silent, hooded figure would flash into my mind. I found myself obsessively locking my car doors, even when parked in my own driveway, a small, irrational ritual born of deep-seated unease? Had I offered a ride to a lingering spirit, forever trapped on that lonely road? Or had I encountered something far more insidious, something that simply pretended to be a ghost, a presence that used the guise of the deceased to terrify the living? The memory of that night, of the impossible absence, still haunts me. It's a wound that never quite heals, a constant reminder of the thin veil between what we perceive as real and what lies just beyond. I often wonder what would have happened if I hadn't looked away, if I had simply kept my eyes on the road. Would he have remained? Would he have eventually spoken? And if he did, what horrifying truth would have emerged from beneath that hood? I don't know, and honestly, I don't want to know. The experience left me with a profound sense of disquiet, a feeling that the world is far stranger and more dangerous than we ever truly understand. The empty passenger seat in my car, though now filled with grocery bags or coats, will always carry the phantom imprint of that silent, terrifying traveler. It reminds me that sometimes the things that aren't there are the most terrifying of all. Even now, years later, the memory of that night on Whisperwind Highway can still seize me, pulling me back into the suffocating grip of that impossible encounter. The details have not faded. If anything, they've sharpened with time, each silent moment, each inexplicable chill etched deeper into my mind. I still drive that car, sometimes out of necessity, sometimes out of a strange, morbid defiance, but the passenger seat is never just a passenger seat anymore. It's a void, a space where something vanished, a constant reminder of the fragility of my own perception, and the terrifying possibility that reality is far more porous than we dare to imagine. I've learned to live with the unease, the lingering question marks that float in the air around me. Was it a ghost, a glitch in the world, or a temporary fracture in my own sanity? The truth remains elusive, a whispered secret that the desolate roads keep to themselves. But the fear, that's a truth I carry with me every single day. It's in the way I glance quickly at the backseat before I get into my car, the way I avoid eye contact with strangers on lonely stretches of road, the way a sudden drop in temperature can send a jolt of ice through my veins. The silence, above all, is what stays with me, the absolute, profound silence of a presence that was there, and then wasn't. It taught me that some horrors don't scream or chase. They simply exist, unsettling the very fabric of your world, leaving you forever questioning what's real and what isn't. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can still catch a faint, earthy, metallic scent in the air, a ghost of a smell, a reminder that some passengers, once picked up, never truly leave.